5 years ago, I felt like crap. I was bloated, inflamed, literally my fingernails were falling off, and eating just made me feel bad. I'm gonna fast forward to today. My digestion definitely isn't perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it once was, and I am a better person for it. Taking control of my gut health has actually changed my life, and I am in no way being dramatic. So when I found out that there was a true gut health and poop expert...
I love talking about poop. And today, you will too.
I decided I was going to track her down and interview her. Now, this all started on April 7th of 2021 when I listened to this episode of the Kelly LeVeque podcast. Kelly had interviewed Sarah Greenfield, a registered dietitian, and I pretty much loved everything Sarah had to say. She was scientific but empathetic, and she was exactly the kind of expert I had been searching for during my digestive distress. So after 2 years of email badgering and a lot of back and forth, I finally got to interview her. And so today, my friends, I am sharing Sarah's gut health secrets, letting you into her world, and having her answer your questions about everything from poop to probiotics. Let's get started. Hey guys, it's Robin, and welcome back to the Science of Self-Care. I am so incredibly excited because today we are speaking with Sarah Greenfield, aka Fearless Fig. We'll be discussing her new gut archetype quiz, as well as going through a few questions and answers submitted by you guys. Such a pleasure to have her on, so without further ado, I'd love to just dive into the interview. Hey Sarah, thanks for being here. I just introduced you, but I would love if you could also introduce yourself for a moment.
My name is Sarah Greenfield. I am a functional medicine dietitian and a self-proclaimed poop aficionado, and my work and my passion is helping women reclaim their power in healing their own bodies.
I'm super happy to have you on. I feel like we've been back and forth for a while. I have been following your work, and I first fell in love with you when you really described yourself as a poop lover, like the person your friends go to when they want to learn more about these really intimate things that no one is ever talking about. So I'm really excited to have you here to share your expertise, answer some questions. So before I ramble on too long, I would love to just hear a little bit about how you began your journey into the world of gut health.
So let's see if I can make this as concise as possible. So I really think I started at a young age when I just grew up with an awareness of health, and there was different ways of eating. That was kind of like my first insight. I was like, wow, you can eat one way or you can eat another way. And there's foods that are better for you and foods that are like loaded with sugar. And I had that awareness as a little kid. And then my mom was just a chronic dieter. So she was always like, on to the next. And I was really fascinated by it, but from a scientific perspective. And then I was also surrounded in a family with a lot of digestive issues. So that was kind of like the priming. And then I got to college and found that nutrition was an option. And I started learning about the biochemistry and the biology that goes into how we break down foods and how we interact with food. So for me, initially, it was really just this big awareness around food and how it impacted our bodies. And then this like lingering digestive issue piece. And I always had digestive issues, but I never really fully understood it until I was probably in college, which is when my digestive issues got pretty bad. And then after college, I started running marathons and working a lot, and that just trashed my health. And I was a dietitian. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm in this space. I'm learning about all the things. And I couldn't help myself. I couldn't alleviate my bloating. I couldn't regulate my bowel movements. But I love talking about it. I love talking about poop. I used to carry like a little fake poop around with me. So there was something there where I was like, wow, there's this really incredible connection that people have around the fact that we all poop. So I was like, there's my in. That's a really like beautiful place to connect to other people. And then there was levity and laughter and joy in that. So I was in my exploration, like laughing and really getting into poop. And then as a dietitian, I was just really like, okay, I know I love poop. I know I love food. It's like funny to say in the same thing. But how do I really make a deeper impact? And if I wasn't able to help myself, like how am I actually able to help anyone? So I started to get more into like food as medicine and eventually found functional medicine. And that for me was when everything clicked. I was like, oh, there's a different way to explore health imbalances outside of just going to the doctor and saying your labs are fine, everything's okay. And I could go deeper and I could put together food, I could put together labs, I could understand inflammation, I could look at energetics. Like all of those things are really critical to healing. And that's when everything kind of came together for me and clicked. And I was able to go deeper with my own healing, and then ultimately was able to extend that to other people. So that's like my journey in a nutshell.
It's always a hard thing to capture in just a few sentences. But what I think is so beautiful about what you do is you really combine these scientific elements, like you were saying, the biochemistry of the body, with also those emotional elements, which of course impact our biochemistry so much. And I think this is more of an emerging trend now, but it certainly, these worlds used to be very siloed. And so I love that is a big part of your philosophy. I think it's interesting that you said there was a time period where you already knew a lot, but you weren't really able to help yourself and you were still struggling. Was there a period where you didn't realize you were actually struggling? Because I noticed that in myself and people around me, sometimes there's a period where you're maybe not feeling so well, but you're almost not aware that it could be better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I was in my 20s. I was in my internship to become a dietitian and then pursuing my career. And I remember I would have days where I literally had to sleep all day. And I thought that was normal. I thought it was just, I was like tired and run down. I would get extremely bloated and just be like, this is how it is. I'm Jewish. I just have a weak stomach. Like I always had a way to invalidate what was going on or to rationalize and be like, no, but this is why. And I think when we are just in the context just in our culture, everything that pushes our bodies to the limit is celebrated. So the harder you work is celebrated. The more you disconnect from your feelings is celebrated. I personally found that working in a corporate environment, that to be successful, I couldn't be crying. I couldn't be emoting. I had to just like button it up and be in my masculine. And for me, that masculine was very much like goal-oriented, achievement-oriented, and everything else was shut it down. So if there was any sort of communication from my body, I would ignore it. I would override it. I would justify it away. And there's a huge period of time where I didn't make the connection. I knew that like it was uncomfortable to be in my body. Like I had those moments, absolutely. And that was always more apparent for me around my period. Like I remember just there's times when I feel like I want to like step out of my body, but there wasn't a drive or a desire to figure it out. It was just like, make it stop so I can keep going. That was really where I kind of settled into. It was like, can I just take an Advil? Can I just like quick fix so that it doesn't disrupt my journey of goal achievement? Like that's all I cared about. So yeah, my body was a burden at that point, but I didn't look at it as like something that needed to be invested in longer term, or that this was going to be a longer term problem. Even though through all of this, I was raised health conscious and I'm a dietitian. Like I had all of these things to be conscious of, but it was like, nope, I'm not gonna go there.
I can personally relate to that so much. You know, eating as I saw healthy for many years, later realizing it wasn't really working for me. But, just because you are maybe surrounded by different ideologies in health doesn't always mean that translates to you feeling your best and recognizing when you're not. So I think then there's an interesting point of when people recognize, okay, there's something wrong, but now maybe my labs are normal, or maybe I'm not being taken seriously, or I'm just confused and overwhelmed. Now what? And I can imagine this might be the moment that a lot of people come to you. What are some common reasons people, clients come to you, and how do you sort of begin unwrapping this very complex journey that has led them to you?
I would say the biggest reason people come to see me is they're just completely overwhelmed, defeated, and some cases their pain threshold has gotten really high. So there's kind of like this spectrum where they're either just like tired, run down, defeated, or their body's in so much pain and they've been dismissed for so long that they just are like, help me. I can't live like this anymore. And everybody is dismissing me. So it's kind of like those things, but gosh, there's so much. I think the through line for all of that is this, just this concept of being disempowered, where you're told that what you feel isn't valid, what you're experiencing isn't valid, and that you need to just suck it up, manage your stress, get mental help. Like that's often a way that we're dismissed as well. It's like, oh, you need to like talk to someone because it's in your head. And yeah, it's just a really low place to be in, to not understand or trust what your body is telling you, and then to get angry at it, and then to be dismissed. So that's kind of a place I really see people kind of arrive at, where they're like, what do I do? I want to love my body, but and they might not say this outwardly, but I'm mad at it.
Frustration and anger, yeah. So this is one of the reasons I'm really excited about your new gut archetype quiz, because I think it gives a lot of people an inkling of where to start. And I would love if you could tell us a little bit more about how you formulated this, maybe walk us through some of the archetypes. I got Sage, so I know a bit about Sage, but I'd love to hear a bit about, how this came about and review some of the archetypes.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a while, excuse me, and specifically working with women with digestive issues. Like that's been my niche for years and years and years, probably for my entire career. As I mentioned, I walked around with like poop in my purse. So the people that I was having conversations with was all poop related. And then I was a runner, and if anyone's a runner, like you can only run with someone for a little bit before you're like farting or talking about poop or sweating, or it's just like a very humbling exercise. So it just brings out your humanness. So like poop conversations were always in my world. So I've had a very amazing opportunity to work with so many women with such specific issues. And through that, I was finding that there was kind of these common buckets or categories I could put people in just through talking to them. So just through their energy, I was like, okay, this person is very anxious or type A, or very kind of, control, can't let go, constipated. So I was seeing all of these different presentations of symptoms and energies together. And I thought that was really fascinating. And what I wanted to do, I was like, all right, let me see if I can actually identify these types of women that I see. So I narrowed it down to 4 different types, and there's distinctions between each type. And I was like, that's really spot on. Like these are the energies that I hold for women. And then what I was able to do, which is really cool, since I do so much testing on people, I do blood work, I do cortisol testing and hormone testing and genetic testing and food sensitivity testing. Like I run pretty extensive labs on the clients that I work with, because I think that's a very key piece in disrupting overwhelm and providing clarity. Like, yes, we have to work on energetics. Yes, we have to work on self-love. And we also need some like physiological data to feel grounded and confident and certain, and stop the spiral of like, oh, but what if? And it's like, no, here's our data. Here's what's going on. Here's why you feel that way. So that's really grounding. So taking the energetics of the women that I knew and combining it with like all of the data, that's how the gut archetypes were developed and born. Essentially was, can I provide women that aren't ready to step into extensive testing with some context and clarity of where to start their journey based on the patterns that I'm seeing and just what I know from all of this extensive testing.
I love that so much, because I think context and clarity is exactly what's missing in that moment of just frustration and anger at your body. So I was Sage, and I loved that you also included biomarkers and little self-care tips. Are you able to give us a glimpse of each of the 4 buckets that you've been able to put your clients into?
Yeah, so there's 4 different archetypes. in no particular order. Sage, the one that you got, we can talk about that, is the woman that has really, they kind of come to me after they've experienced life. They've been on this journey for a long time. Maybe they've worked with other functional practitioners, and they're at this place where they're like, okay, I know that my body is worthy of healing. I know that I can do these things, but I don't really know where to start, and I feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is kind of a through line. So this person is really, I call her also the queen. Like, she is that queen energy and knows it's time for her to give back to her. And she's just reached a point where she's like, I'm ready to do this. And I've been on the journey and I know the things. So that's kind of the energy and the essence of the sage gut.
Resonates with me. I've been on the journey, still on it always.
And I mean, we're all going to be like, the thing with health, and I think a big part of what I do also is just education on expectation. When you step into this world, when you step into a place where you're questioning your connection to your health and your body, there is no easy fix. It is not a supplement and go, a medication and go. We are really unpacking all of the things that have brought you to this imbalance in your body. And like you had mentioned, it's complex. It is not straightforward. And it's not the simple journey. Like our conventional healthcare is that. It's for busy lifestyle. It's for like keep going and going and going. Like, it does really well with acute issues. And so I'm not knocking conventional medicine. I think conventional medicine absolutely has its place. And when you combine functional and conventional,
yes,
it's like just astronomically better, because we need to understand wellness and root cause and the energetics of healing. And we also need those moments when the body is not functioning in the way in an acute phase where we can, start to heal it. So I digressed on that one. But yeah, sage gut. I'm glad that resonated with you.
Your quiz is accurate.
Yeah, I tested this a lot with my clients I did a lot of testing beforehand just to see if it resonates. And I'm continuing to make tweaks, because nothing is static. Even science, like when you look at science is technically what we consider a truth, but that truth is always changing with advancements in technology, deeper in our understanding, new discoveries. Like, science is not black and white. It is not like, this is science and here it's like, science can prove a truth in a million different ways. So I also subscribe to that there is no like, I haven't like cracked this code and it's going to be this forever. I'm constantly learning and updating and upgrading my knowledge base. So the more that I get, I'm tweaking and really just adding in more value to all of these pieces, which is really fun for me, because I love variety. So sage gut. Then we have our heroic gut, which is more of your like type A anxious doer. This person can and does get what they want. They know how to do things. So when their body starts to change and they can't do it on their own and they can't fix and solve it, that's when they start to spiral because they're like, I know how to fix and solve everything. I get what I want. I can do these things. And so that's heroic gut, is really just this person who can do and give. And oftentimes they don't ask for help, or they don't give themselves the time and space to heal. They're always constantly giving their power and their energy to others. So that's the essence of the heroic gut. And then we have the chameleon gut, which actually, it's interesting. This is the most popular. This is the one that comes up the most in the people that have taken the quiz. It's a really high percentage of people are the chameleon gut. And I think of this one as more of like the shapeshifter. This person can kind of blend into different situations. So it's harder for them to stand in what they know in their body, because they're very impacted by their environment. They're very impacted by other people. They're very impacted by what they hear. And so it can be tough to, be like, what is actually happening in my body? Is it something someone told me? Is it this article that I read that's freaked me out? So I like to also, I don't know if I mentioned the shapeshifter. It's like this very adaptable energy, but can also get kind of lost and disconnected from themselves. So this person is just overwhelmed and confused and is like, has the supplement graveyard where you like open their cabinet and you're like, whoa.
I love that term, supplement graveyard. I've seen many of those.
Yeah, they're intense because I mean, it's easy to, when you don't know yourself, and I think this is also kind of the through line through the archetypes, but when you don't trust your body or don't understand the messages that it's giving you, it's really easy to succumb to marketing. And we're constantly getting bombarded. Like, you need to take this probiotic. This helped. Apple cider vinegar gummies are gonna, like, all the things and the outrageous claims that we hear. It's hard to navigate all of that. So yeah, super easy to just be like, oh yeah, I do need that, instead of like tuning it down and being like, all right, what do I actually need? Like, that's empowerment. And then our last one is the discerning gut. And this is more of, I almost think of this as like a highly sensitive person. This is someone whose nervous system is just kind of like fried and everything is really dysregulating. And so they're just like tired. They can't even understand what's going on just because their nervous system is so dysregulated. And this person just needs more like quiet time, alone time. And yeah, their gut is all over the place. I also like, this can often be the archetype of like a mother with young children, because that is so dysregulating for the nervous system. And so this is just someone that needs to be nourished and take time for themselves. And again, back to that empowerment, like, how do we start to connect and listen to our own bodies?
I think this is amazing. I can recognize so many people in my personal life in some of these archetypes, and it's a very powerful place to start your journey when you are just lacking that context and clarity, as you said. I know that with each archetype, everyone will be mailed some suggestions of foods, as well as maybe some biomarkers to test. There were a number of really cool variables to look into. How have you selected those biomarkers?
So through looking at data and also pairing that with the different clients that I have and their archetypes, I've been able to kind of narrow it down to say, like, these are the most important ones to have clarity on, because these are going to help you understand your body more and move the needle. So they do change for each archetype, and they're all, I mean, like, I typically do a full panel on every single client. I'm not like cherry picking because I want to see all of the markers. That also helps give me clarity. But when you are just in this overwhelm and spiral, sometimes having that conversation with your doctor, it's like, you don't even know where to start. You don't even know what to ask. You don't even know what labs they're running and why. So this is just a way to kind of step into, okay, can we really look at these labs that are typically dysregulated in each different archetype, and then see and challenge our doctor to say, oh, okay, yes, this is low, this is high. And it gives us that language that I think is really important to be able to have from this like more woo-woo, energetic, la.
The I feel bad and I feel tired.
Yeah, but this gives at least a little bit of language and context to justify some of the symptoms that we have that we can't put, like, that are being dismissed. And when you're like, oh, but my homocysteine is elevated, or my CRP is elevated, like, what, we need to look at that. Or my magnesium is super low. Could that be why I'm not sleeping, or why I have brain fog? So, and I have little descriptions in each one as to like what they do and why they're important. So again, like for me, I'm just thinking about how can I pull generalizations out of something that is very personalized. That's been a challenge for me to say, like, how do I provide value in an area that is very specific to our bioindividuality, our chemical makeup. But again, it's just like, how do we just stop the spiral and get our feet kind of planted on the ground so that we can think about things? Because when you're overwhelmed, you're not making decisions. You're not like, you're offline. Your brain is not functioning. And I that happens to me frequently. When I get overwhelmed, it's just like survival mode.
Yeah. Well, I think you've done a great job with the quiz, making it generalizable enough that you can kind of find yourself in one of these four, but still having it specific enough that it gives you some direction. I love in the suggestions that you get at the end of the quiz that you've included self-care. I would just personally like to know, what are some of your favorite self-care practices that you hold dearly in your life to make sure that your gut stays healthy?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for me is like warmth. I love being warm. So baths with magnesium flakes and Epsom salt. I love like, magnesium flakes are like so magical to me because they look like little crystals. So I love putting that in a bath. I love a diffuser with different essential oils. That's really important to me. I like, I'm probably more identified as a heroic gut. I'm very like, kind of like a chaotic type A, but I like achieving. And so something like Insight Timer is really fun for me to gamify meditation because I need to have that time and space to disconnect. I need to get grounded in the morning. So I like to use Insight Timer to track. It's like, you've gotten another star from 10 days in a row of meditation. I'm like, yes. And it gives me variety as well. So those are probably, and being outside actually, when I'm really just like confused or overwhelmed or don't know where to start, I go outside and I just breathe deeply. I'll touch trees. I just need to be in nature.
That sounds like an amazing day. A magnesium bath, nature, Insight Timer.
And like quiet. I mean, like, again, as a heroic gut, I am very intense. I can be very intense. So finding that balance of masculine and feminine and where those can both be healthy and connected, that's another thing that I like. When I'm frustrated or overwhelmed, I have to pause and be like, what do I need? What is out of balance here? How can I be more? Oftentimes it's how can I be more in my feminine? So that can also show up as like crafting. Like sometimes I need to spend some time like playing with glitter or jelly painting. Those are really important things for me too, because it just gives me that like, non-structured play.
Yes, I say this all the time, but for me, doing makeup sometimes in the morning is like a girly creative playtime that is so therapeutic. It's definitely good for my mental health. So I have a number of questions that we have submitted from different people, but maybe before we go into that, is there anything else you want to touch upon related to the quiz or other work that you do?
I think the biggest thing for me is just when I think about gut healing, because like I said, I've been in this a while. I've seen a lot of things. I haven't seen it all, but I've seen many things. And for a long time, I was really just focused on labs. I was like, we can do all the testing and we can just do labs. So that to me is like science. I was just like, science, science, science. If we focus on that, we can heal the body. And people would heal, but only to a certain extent. And what I've since in the last year kind of stepped back and recalibrated my work and recalibrated myself. I mean, I'm on, a healing journey always. I'm on a self-exploration journey always. And what I realized was missing in the work that I was doing were two really big pieces. And that was a deeper connection and trust and love of self. That is critical to healing. Like, again, you can do all the labs, you can take all the supplements, but if you are speaking to yourself in a bad way, if you believe that your body is inherently broken, if you think that you are not enough, it is going to be hard to move that needle. And so we spend a lot of time looking at, well, how do we validate who we are? How do we really dive into this self-love in a grounded way? That's not just like, love yourself. And you're like, no, I understand, but like, I don't get it. So for me, it's like data. How do we pull in data? So I do energetic readings with human design to really ground people into self. Because if we do not have that groundedness in ourself, it's really hard to move forward. And then the next piece is connection. So when I think of healing, it's really, do we have the data and the science? Are we connected and falling in love with ourselves? And then do we have connection and community to support that? Because when women come together and support each other and have a common goal of healing, the change is insane. I've worked with women one-on-one for the majority of my career. And about a year ago, I started doing groups, and to see women come together in safe community and connection, it's like unbelievable. I was like, people aren't going to want to talk about their poop. They're not going to want to listen to other people talk about their poop, but it's not what I thought at all. I almost find that the people in my groups have better heal, like they just heal quicker, and it's more sustained because they have this energetic support of other women.
I love this so much. Just this combination of so many elements of health, the hard data and the biomarkers, but also the community and the self-love and self-care. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful mix that is becoming a little bit more present in the world, but definitely I think you are a trendsetter in this regard. So I would like to now switch to the questions and answers. I am really excited to delve into some of these questions. Some are relatively specific, but these are real people facing real digestive issues. So let's see. First question we got is, how does caffeine affect your gut?
Caffeine comes up a lot. People are very attached and in love with their caffeine, and oftentimes people use it as a way to go to the bathroom. So it is a stimulant. It does pull water into the gut, and it can help with motility and bowel movements. So a lot of times people that are constipated will lean on this as something to use to get things moving. I don't inherently think coffee is bad. I think also if you're using it in the morning, if it's a ritual, if it does help stimulate things, that's totally okay in my opinion. The only time that I look at coffee as something that we need to really like dive into and understand is when you're having multiple cups throughout the day. If you cannot poop without it at all, if you are using it to energize yourself, then it's like, okay, is this a dependency versus a habit that nurtures you and you love? That's a really important piece to kind of differentiate. And then I do, in the science piece of things, I do food sensitivity testing to really understand, okay, what is creating burden on your body right now? What is upregulating your immune system? So part of that food sensitivity test is caffeine and also coffee. We're looking at both separate. Do you have an issue with caffeine just as the chemical compound? Or do you have an issue with the food, the bean that is coffee? And if that is elevated, I do make the recommendation for people to remove it. And it's a sensitive one, again, because it's like there's a lot of joy in the art and the habit of making coffee. So we also have to look at, okay, is this going to impact your life in a way where you're like, if I can't have coffee, then I'm not going on. Like, I hate this. Some people are very attached. So we're always looking for a balance, because even though there is data to say this is potentially problematic, if it's impacting quality of life and creating more stress and creating unhappiness, then we have to balance, okay, well, what's going to be the biggest win for us? Because usually there's 10 other foods that come up as sensitive. So if you can really eliminate those, then the coffee isn't going to be as big of a burden on your body. But we have to find, that's the personalization. We have to find that dance between what the data says and then how is this ultimately going to make you feel, because that's not unimportant.
And is there often a difference in people being either sensitive to caffeine or either coffee, and does it fall one way or the other?
So it doesn't come up that much. I think it's one of the more infrequent ones, but sometimes people will, I wouldn't say that there is like, oh yeah, if you have caffeine, then coffee also pops up. Sometimes it can just be caffeine. Sometimes it can just be coffee, which is really fascinating and interesting. So it's not, I haven't seen any patterns within that being like, this is how it shows up.
Great. Okay, next question. How can I reintroduce foods after an elimination diet? I think this question is especially relevant after you were just talking about food sensitivities.
Yeah, and this one is really important. And this is something we do go into in my gut restoration program, because what I see happen is people with digestive issues, they'll do elimination diets, they'll do low FODMAP, they'll do these pretty restrictive diets. And these are not meant to be long-term. These are meant to look at, okay, this is a problem now. How do we just reduce burden so that your body can start to get back online? So the issue is when we don't do reintroduction. So the way that I typically like to do it is we want to take out, we have our specific foods that we're looking at. And in the case of the way I support people, we're looking at our food sensitivities. We're taking those out for 2 to 3 months. This is how I do it. And we're also actively working on restoring gut diversity and gut balance. And to me, when we have this piece of taking the foods out and working with the integrity of the gut, we're able to bring foods back in a little bit quicker. I think the general, like if you're eliminating something, you might do it for longer than 2 to 3 months. But regardless, you want to get to a place where you are not having the symptoms anymore. Like you take out 15 foods and now your bloating's better. You're pooping more consistently. That's the goal. And then what you can do is you can start to introduce one food at one meal every 3 days is how I like to do it. Because with food sensitivities, we're not dealing with allergies, we're dealing with food sensitivities, which can have a delayed response. So if you are like, cool, my symptoms are in check, I feel confident that if I ate something, I would know what, an imbalance in my gut, I would know what that feels like, then have a small amount of that at a meal, give it 3 days, track your symptoms. And then if there's no symptoms, you can bring it back in, but it's not something that I would eat every single day. I would vary it. So you are having it maybe a couple times a week. Or if you're cooking with something, like let's say you're reactive to, asparagus, you can make a dish with asparagus, have it for a couple days in a row, and then, do something else and give your body a couple days of a break. Because ideally with food sensitivities, we really want to decrease that recurrent exposure. So it's like if you have almond milk every single day, like rotate it the next week to oat milk or hemp milk or something where you're not just getting that same exposure all the time.
Super interesting that you also do things in combination with the reintroduction to help heal the gut. I think this relates to the next question that we got, which is leaky gut a real thing? I think I might have it. How do I resolve it? So how do you help actually strengthen the actual gut lining?
Yeah, so this is a good question. I feel like there's a lot in here. Leaky gut is 1,000% a thing. It can be measured in conventional medicine as well, even though it might not be recognized. But essentially what we're saying is leaky gut is cell permeability, and inflammation creates cell permeability just by function of what it does. It's actually really important. When we are inflamed, it's our body's way of activating the immune system. And part of the process, something like histamines, come and they actually make cells more permeable so that these immune cells can come in and start to do cleanup work. So at its core, inflammation is cell permeability or opening cells up. So when we have inflammation in our gut, there is permeability. Absolutely. The lining of our cells within our gut start to open up, and then things can get into our bloodstream that shouldn't be there. In, it's like, oh, here's a little particle of blueberry that should have been better digested. And then our bodies are like, oh, what the heck is that? And then they kind of go into attack mode. So yes, leaky gut, 1,000% real. You can also have leaky brain, like anything where there's tight cell junctions, which is, I guess, our whole body, but like the blood-brain barrier can also get leaky as well. So yes, leaky things,
leaky things
are real, and they can be measured through like homocysteine, CRP, neoterin, MMP9, myeloperoxidase. Those are all really critical inflammatory markers that conventional medicine doesn't typically run, but you can kind of at least speak the language there because they give us context into how inflammatory processes are upregulated and turned on. So those are some really important labs that can just, again, give us that context for our conversation. And as far as healing leaky gut, it is about, since it's inflammatory in nature, it's about reducing the burden. So the way I approach it is, okay, we have this inflammation, we have this permeability. What's causing that? Well, we know food is going to impact it. So if you have sensitivities, if you have allergies, taking those out is really important. And then we want to look at the balance of bacteria that we have in the gut. Is there yeast overgrowth? Do we have a lot more gram-negative bacterial strains that are higher? Those create endotoxins, which also make the gut more permeable. So we really want to look at what's happening in the gut. I mean, nutrient status is another big one. Through blood work, you can see, like, are you getting enough omega-3s? Do you have enough magnesium? Is your B vitamins high enough? Because all of these things are also critical in just the foundations for supporting immune regulation or inflammation regulation and immune regulation as well. So, okay, reducing burden with foods, balancing the microbiome, and nervous system regulation. That's huge. If we're chronically like on fight or flight, which so many of us are, I mean, just think about when you're sitting in a room with your cell phone, that thing is like dinging and beeping and you're getting notifications. And it's just like, that's a lot for our nervous system to handle. So through regulating your nervous system, you can actually diversify and heal your gut as well. So those are kind of like the three things that I would say are really critical in reversing leaky gut. And then there's lots of supplements that you can take to support that. Glutamine is really good at turning over cell lining. I also really like immunoglobulins or colostrum. But I always say that, and I want to like, everyone's always looking for like, just tell me the supplement that'll fix leaky gut. And I just want to iterate that it is layered, right? It's not one thing that you're going to take that's going to heal it. It's a combination of all those things, and then knowing what are the right supplements to layer in there and balance so that you can heal leaky gut, because it is possible to heal it.
Great, thank you. And the next question is, how can women manage their gut health in combination with their cycle / eating in line with their cycle?
Yeah. So our cycle can often dysregulate our gut function. That's pretty, when people start to tune in, they can notice, okay, 5 days before my period, I get really constipated or I get really bloated. Right after my period, I feel amazing. So yes, there is that, our hormones impact our gut function. Estrogen, progesterone, those will all slow motility. So as they rise, it's common that we do get more bloated. The best way I think to combat that is, one, to start paying attention to it, tracking your symptoms, tracking your cycle. You can do that, like an Aura ring is a really great way to start to tune in, because it gives you temperature. And when you can track body temperature and you start to see that go up, that's when your body is kind of leading up towards ovulation. You'll ovulate, and then, which is getting your period, and then your temperature will drop. So that can give you at least some context and insight. And then I really like a lot of, there's a book called The Womancode, which is, what's her name? Is it Aviva Ram? I think it's Aviva Ram. She's an amazing naturopathic doctor. And she talks a lot more about, okay, when you're in your luteal phase, this is what your energy is going to feel like. These are the foods that can support you. This is how you can start to connect in with your body to know what to do. So I would check out that book, because it can be really empowering to say, all right, here's where I'm at in my cycle. I shouldn't be like, I have to rest more. This is a phase where I need a little bit more rest. And so it just gives us, again, more confidence and communication within our bodies. And I think that's what it all comes down to. Because when we feel empowered to say like, oh, okay, I know what my body is telling me, I know what I need to give it, then it's a different game.
Such a great recommendation. I will also immediately go buy that book. This next question's interesting. Is meat good for you? I tried limiting meat to lower my carbon footprint, but noticed that my digestion is better when I have more meat in my diet. Is this normal? Any tips?
Yeah, so this goes back to personalization. Some people do better without meat. Some people really, really need it. I often see that most people do need some form of meat, just because it's such a high bioavailable protein. And I want to say this in a nice way. A lot of times vegan diets are not supportive of overall health for many people, not for everyone. Some people can do really well on a vegan diet, but I see a lot of women that are struggling after being vegan with a lot of digestive issues, because if you're vegan, and then we have to think too, like genetically, how are you set up? Are you methylating? How is your detox working? Like if all of these things are imbalanced, and then now you're also vegan, you are potentially limiting your body's ability and access to things like taurine, glycine, these really important amino acids that actually move us through phases of detox. And so now we pull that out and our bodies aren't detoxifying as well. If we're, genetically not methylating, we're already kind of shooting ourselves in the foot there. So it really just depends on kind of your biochemical makeup and how full your bucket is. But I think that's it's a very long answer to, is meat good for you? For some people it is. I think for most people it is. And for some people, they're going to feel better without it.
I think that was a really helpful answer to this question that is just, very difficult to answer. And then we have 2 more questions. Any tips for having the best poop?
Ooh, great question. Oh my God, so many. I think one of the first things that I always think about is just like how physically what your environment looks like making sure you're elevating your feet so that your rectum is in the correct position to help you eliminate things better. So either doing like a squatty potty, or I'll even stack books when I travel next to the toilet, or I'll take the hotel trash can and flip it over and put my feet on that. I think that can really make a world of a difference, just changing your actual position on the toilet. Oftentimes giving yourself time and space to poop, not trying to rush through it. When we have really chaotic morning routines, we can override our signal or that knowing that we have to poop and be I don't have time. So giving yourself time and space, creating an environment where you feel relaxed. Sometimes, not bringing technology into the bathroom, really, really helpful. So that's just from, how you can set yourself up for success. And then there's just general things that you can do to keep a healthy microbiome, which is going to help you have glorious poops, is eating fermented foods, getting outside, breathing in nature. That's really important. We get exposure to things called phytoncides, which are given off by plants, and those can be really supportive to our immune system and antimicrobial and antibacterial. So getting out in nature just gives us a little bit more protection and diversity within our gut. Eating diverse foods. If you can do 40 different types of whole foods per week, that's always a really good challenge to see. And that doesn't mean different, you have to eat all these. It's can you do a red apple and a green apple? Can you do red quinoa and regular quinoa and black rice? And just getting this diversity and variety, which is giving all of these different strains of bacteria different fuel and food. I think, I mentioned, nervous system regulation, really, really important. So can you take some time to just ground yourself, calm the body down? Sunlight exposure is great. And then movement, 30 minutes of movement, 60 minutes of movement that's not killing you. I think that's also we tend to be, I tend to be extreme. I'm okay, then it's orange theory and high intensity. And you can go for a walk and that's going to be really good for your gut. So, keeping it moderate is really good. And then the last one is sleep. I think sleep is really critical because during sleep is a time of repair. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term cellular autophagy. That comes up a lot with intermittent fasting. Yes. But when we sleep, we are repairing damaged cells and clearing out dead cells, which is cellular autophagy. We are detoxifying. We are nurturing our microbiome and its diversity. So kind of sticking to those foundational pillars, am I sleeping well? Am I managing my stress? The things that can kind of be boring, but are critical. Those are really good ways to set yourself up for a beautiful bowel movement. Oh, and then fermented foods. That's another one. If you can tolerate fermented foods, getting those in your diet daily, really, really important. But not everyone can tolerate them. And if you can't tolerate them, that's usually a good indication that your microbiome is imbalanced. If you eat something and you're immediately bloated or have diarrhea, that's a really good sign that your gut needs a little love and support.
TLC. Yeah, I love that you mentioned, trying to get 40 different types of foods, whole foods in your diet per week, kind of gamifying it, because it's kind of crazy. Sometimes I look at my groceries and think, I feel like I've seen this every week, eating the same things. I'm going to take to that challenge and try to really find 40 different whole foods items next week.
Yeah, it can get tough, but it's fun to be oh my gosh. And then there's little things you can do, just like I said, making a quinoa blend, and there you go, you're having different polyphenols. So it's a fun way to gamify your food.
Very last question. Are probiotic supplements good for you? I've read mixed reviews.
All these are really good questions. And it's not a yes or no answer. It depends on your microbiome makeup. So what I will say is I do use probiotics pretty much on every single one of my clients. The only difference is I know what their gut microbiome looks like and I know what strains they need. So I can be a little bit more specific in what I'm recommending. I typically do like soil-based probiotics. So I think those are a good general one. Those are typically pretty well tolerated for people with dysregulated guts. And, you know, a lot of live strain probiotics can be putting in more bacteria that are already there and creating more bloating and discomfort. That used to happen to me. I would take a probiotic and then I would have to like fart for an hour because I was like, this doesn't feel good, but it's supposed to be good. And then you keep forcing it on yourself and you're like, I don't feel good, but someone told me it's good for me, so I'm just going to deal with it. And that's a really sticky place to get into. So I would say, like, if you're experimenting with probiotics, tune in, see how it makes you feel. If it doesn't make you feel good, stop taking it. That's a really, like, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Like, there's discomfort, right? Like, there's things as we're growing and changing and adapting new habits that bring up a lot of emotional discomfort. But if you're being in physical pain from something, stop doing it and reassess or get support, or, you know, like, we don't need to suffer alone on these healing journeys. And I find that so many people are just like doing the probiotic, researching, like looking at all of these conflicting pieces of information. And it doesn't have to be like that. Like, this is a complex area. It is important to get support. Like, I don't think most people aren't going to do therapy on themselves, right? Like, you go to a therapist and you get context and you get guidance. Same thing. I don't know why we spend hours, and I'm guilty of it too, researching, trying to piece together something that is so complex. If you don't feel well, there are many people that can hold that container and support you in a healing journey.
Oh my goodness, Sarah. Thank you so much for just sharing your wealth of information. Such a powerful conversation that's going to help a lot of people. I would love to know down below what part of this interview you felt was the most helpful, if any of the archetypes resonated with you, and if you have any other gut health questions that maybe in a part 2 we can address with Sarah or another expert, or just good old digging into the research. Part of the reason why I started this channel is because I felt like a completely new person after I learned to understand my digestion a bit better and start to heal my gut. And so I am deeply passionate about empowering other people to do the same. So on that note, I hope you're having a nice day. Hope you had a lovely poop today, if not today, tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting this channel. It really means a lot, and I'm very excited for more videos to come. Bye guys!